Sacramento was giving this power to unelected bureaucrats that were absolutely regulating us to the point of strangling us. And they didn't even know what we did or why we did it.
Representing California's 33rd Assembly District,
including Fresno, Kings, Tulare counties.
Assemblywoman Alexandra Macedo.
What are the biggest challenges your clients are facing where regulation is killing their business?
And the water instability that the state of California loves to create, man-made droughts, it's something to be studied.
Alexandra Macedo, welcome to State of Gold.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Truly, it's an honor
Great.
to be here.
Likewise.
I always like meeting like-minded folks that want to fight for this state. So.
100%.
We do
100%.
exist in California still.
We do exist. We do exist. It's an uphill battle. It's a fight worth fighting. And I didn't tell you this, but I have 5 kids growing up in California.
Oh, God bless you.
From 6 months old to 20. So I have a lot vested in California. How did you get into this game? You've got a personal story.
Yeah.
You're one of the younger members. You've been in this a few months. How did you get into it, and what's surprising?
So I'm actually the youngest Republican Assemblywoman in California's history.
Okay.
So
California's history.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tied for first place, but we're up there. So at 30 years old, I got elected. But, you know, I kind of think that God's plan is always so much greater than my own. And my story goes all the way back to 1939, which I was not born in 1939 for the record, but my great-grandfather immigrated here and started my family's livestock market. And
Which country?
From the Azores.
From the Azores.
Yes, I'm Portuguese. I'm full-blooded
Okay.
Portuguese.
I'm part Portuguese.
Okay, wonderful. We always like
Quarter.
to be more. Oh, well, we'll claim you. Kind of. I'm just kidding. But my dad owns and operates my family's livestock market in Tulare. I'm 4th generation and the first female involved in that business. And so I grew up at the livestock market, loving agriculture, loving what my family did and how rooted we were in the valley. And if I wasn't there, I was on my grandfather's dairy, and I actually lost my grandfather through COVID. But,
Sorry.
you know what? He lived a very full life. And he actually started my family's farm with a $400 bank loan when he came home from the service. And my mom and I actually farm in his honor, Jon Farms, and we grow almonds, recently diversified into citrus. And so I always just had a passion for ag, and I knew it was in my veins. I joked that Central Valley dirt flows through my veins. So on top of that, my mom is very entrepreneurial herself. She's a civil engineer, and she became a civil engineer at a time a lot of women weren't doing that.
I bet.
And so she started her own firm.
Trailblazer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And just smart as heck. And in about 2008, when the rules and regulations started hitting ag really hard, she was in the trenches making sure that ag's voice was heard when we knew what was coming down the pipe. And now we know just how much that's exploded. And being the dutiful daughter that I was usually in tow with her. And so listening to these conversations and being privy to these conversations, I just knew that I wanted to be a part of it. I just didn't know where that was going to be. So when I moved home after finishing up my undergrad, I started managing her engineering office. And we did project design, management, permitting, and compliance. Well, on the permitting and compliance side of things, our job was just getting to be dang near impossible sometimes. And when we disagreed and we asked why, they would just say, because I said so. And our projects, you know, with time.
The nanny state.
Oh, absolutely. And time means money. And so I got so frustrated, and I said, one night at the dinner table, I told my mom, I said, you know, I'm just so tired of it. And what can I do? She goes, well, you could go to law school. And so I thought, okay, why not? So I actually stayed working and managing the engineering office. I'd commute an hour, go to law school at night, come home and sleep for a few hours, maybe if I was lucky, and do it all again the next day. And it was brutal, but it proved to be extremely fruitful because I graduated debt-free from law school with an established client base that I saw an opportunity, and that was to start my own business. And so I started Macedo Environmental Consulting, that I focused predominantly on the compliance side of agriculture. And I did things with the Water Board, Air Board, OSHA, resource management, you name it. If it had an acronym, I probably worked with them. And I love my job. I still do it to this day, but it was also getting frustrating because I was recognizing that Sacramento was giving this power to unelected bureaucrats that were absolutely regulating us to the point of strangling us. And they didn't even know what we did or why we did it. And I hit that same wall of because I said so. And so I knew it was time to come up here to Sacramento. Maybe they would listen to me up here because we needed a couple things. One was a voice of reason for agriculture in the Central Valley, because the Central Valley has been overlooked for years. And secondly, somebody with a little business experience, because
How about that?
here in California, we like to continue to regulate businesses and then we can't understand why they're leaving. So here I am fighting the good
What a good
fight.
story. Great story. I really appreciate that. I want to talk about your business because I imagine in all those years getting your legal degree and running this business, you got a firsthand look at the bureaucrats, the regulation, how difficult it is for ag businesses to actually run profitably and successfully, sustainably in California. What are the biggest challenges your clients are facing where regulation is killing their business?
A recent study was done that the average cost of compliance every year right now for ag is $1,600 per acre.
Wow.
Per acre. What a lot of people don't realize, because everybody keeps talking about the cost of food, I think a lot of people want to think that the farmers are the one making the money. Farmers are seeing smaller margins than they have since the Great Depression. And if they want to be upset about the cost of food, be upset at the state of California, who has regulated every step of the food supply chain and have driven up that cost that the consumer ultimately bears.
Right.
Ag buys everything retail and sells everything wholesale. We have factors so far out of our control that, a lot of the time there's a lot of prayer and a little bit of luck involved in doing what we do, but 100% of dedication. We're dependent on outside factors like what Mother Nature has in store for us, what the market is
It's an
doing.
act of God business.
Exactly, or what technology looks like, what our labor stream looks like. These are all factors that year to year, we're not really sure. And now when you add in the water instability that the state of California loves to create, man-made droughts, it's something to be studied. I just never will understand the people that are growing food, the 1% of the population that is feeding 100% of the population. Why do we continue to make their lives harder? We should be thanking them and showing them appreciation. And instead, what do we give them? More regulation, more fines, more fees, more bills to pay, and more hands in their cookie jar, and less of them being able to take that home to their families or be able to make their payroll.
Yeah, it seems to be the California way across all businesses. But back to what you've proposed, you're trying to advance legislation to take a significant amount of money, divert it to wildfire management and water conveyance, water infrastructure. I imagine that if you had a magic wand and could change a couple things, that would be one of them. But talk me through the biggest changes you want to see to make it easier for ag to actually do business.
So the fundamental one is water. There's two things that we cannot do what we do without. One of them is water, and the second one is labor. On the labor front, we're seeing that mechanization happening because we're being forced to. But on the water front, a fun fact I like to tell people is, so Tulare County flooded not that long ago because we had a 25-year storm event that we knew was coming, but we were caught flat-footed. Not we as in Tulare County, we as the state of California. We were under drought and flood protocols at the same time. That's insanity. Why is that? That is because for decades we haven't invested in water infrastructure. That not only can we trap and collect this water, we can then move it throughout the state to places that need it. Because naturally, that's what that was meant to do. It's because of our development that Tulare Lake used to be where I live. That's why we have such great soil. It was a lake for years, and now it's dried up. It came back actually during the floods. I would love to see that investment happen. Here's why. It's not just for agriculture. We live in the 4th largest economy in the world.
So Gavin says.
So Gavin says. Then he needs to tell me why we have communities in the state of California, particularly the Central Valley, that don't have access to reliable, safe drinking water.
1 million people in the state.
Yes. That and so what we're doing is we're hauling in bottled water to make sure that they have safe water. And then we're talking about sustainability. That is the absolute opposite of sustainability. And when we talk about water, surface water is a precious resource. That's how we function in agriculture for years. We would get our allocations of water. We would use that to get the ground nice and saturated. It would get the aquifers nice and full. And then if we needed to, we'd pump it from the ground. We're not able to do that anymore because we're getting 10% of our allocations of surface water. Right. And so when we wonder why the Tule Basin is critically overdrafted, it's because you're not giving us that precious resource of surface water. So we are dependent on groundwater. And what are we seeing now as a result of that? High nitrates and things and problems with our water. We're seeing subsidence. So then what was the state of California's answer? Let's do Sigma, which is going to fallow 1 million acres of farm ground. What does that mean? That means that all of the jobs related to those 1 million acres are just going to go away. And we're not just talking about the farm labor jobs. We're talking about the people that sell the products to these farmers. We're talking about
supply chain.
exactly.
Right.
And the service-based businesses around it and the tech services around it, those are all going to suffer. Our economy is going to suffer. And when we're talking about a deficit, why on earth would we give up that opportunity when we have a prime opportunity to work together to make sure urban and rural California has good water, and ag is going to feed them along the way
Yeah.
with safe food grown right here.
Well, amen to that. It's from your mouth to upstairs. And I think, unfortunately, this pattern exists in California leadership across all kinds of different industries. We have an episode that came out Tuesday that's getting a huge amount of traction. We talked about our energy crisis, the fact that we've gone from 20 refineries 25 years ago to 9, about to be 7. And if we keep on this pattern down to 1, and then we wonder why our gas is on the way to, $10. So I think this pattern, unfortunately, is tracking across so many different industries. But let's talk about labor. We're in a critical tension point right now in California where our feds are rightfully trying to enforce immigration law, right? Those ICE staff members and troops, they're doing their jobs. But we have a tension in California with a lot of labor that we rely on that's migrant labor to fuel our industries, including ag. And we have a lot of tensions. I have friends in the ag business. I'm hearing the stories. These are people who want law enforced, but also want to be able to do business. What's the right approach, in your view, to balance these immigration issues with doing business in ag in California right now?
So the one thing that I want to make sure that the general public understands is I'm getting really upset with the amount of hysteria and fear-mongering that has gone into this issue.
Good, let's talk about that.
And what really bothers me is when we conflate the undocumented with immigrants, with criminals, it's not doing anybody any good because you're putting everybody in one giant box. Now, what I can tell you is we love our labor. These are good, hardworking people that I think nobody would argue that they don't want them as part of their community. I love that they're part of our community. It's getting really frustrating because of actually the laws here in California that things like SB 54, local law enforcement cannot work with the federal law enforcement to make sure we're getting the criminals the heck out of here, which I don't care what side of the aisle you're from and what your beliefs are. We shouldn't want to have murders, rapists, and pedophiles in our communities or on our work crews. And I can tell you that that's how a lot of the labor crews feel in the Central Valley as well. It's really frustrating because people have campaigned on immigration for years, and it's not something that's ever come to a full solution. One thing that I have heard from the Trump administration is this is their top priority, which means that these conversations are happening, and I believe reforms are coming. Unfortunately, because of the Biden administration and their years of neglect of allowing high-level people that we don't want in our country here, and we lose track of them, losing track of children. Unfortunately, there is a mess that has to be cleaned up. This is an emotional issue. It's not something that's easy to talk about. What I can tell you, though, is I am optimistic that going forward, we in agriculture need to do our part to make sure that we're communicating what our needs are to the federal administration. I'm a state elected, so obviously that's a little frustrating that I don't have the say, but it's also frustrating when I have colleagues up here in Sacramento that want to complain about the issue and want to create this hysteria and this fear, but then when they're asked what they can do about it, they say, well, I'm a state elected, you have to talk to your congressman.
Right.
So let's be authentic and let's be genuine in what we can actually do to help people. And here in California, that starts with repealing SB 54 and making sure that we have a secure border.
Right. Okay. I want to come back to that in a sec. I want to ask our listeners and viewers, if you enjoyed this content, subscribe and follow us so you don't miss another great conversation like this one with Alexandra Macedo. Okay. Back to one more question on this. Assemblywoman, are you getting complaints from any of your constituents who run ag businesses that their business continuity is being hurt by the current federal enforcement? Or are they just cruising along and they're okay?
The main thing that we're trying to do is just keep the spotlight off of the Central Valley. But yes, the biggest thing is the fear that people aren't going to show up to work,
Right.
and we have a perishable product that they can't just sit in the
It's the most
fields.
perishable product.
Yes, which is frustrating because so many of these fights, we can let laptops sit in a warehouse till we figure it out.
Right.
We don't have that luxury with
Right.
oranges and a lot of the fresh fruit products that we grow in the Central Valley. So, yes, it would be really nice if we were sent a clear message of what we can do.
Right.
Because, like I said, as somebody who comes from a family farm, we want to make sure that anybody who works in our industry feels like there's security and stability in the
Right.
future, not just on this particular issue, but in so many issues. And that's the main complaint I hear is the lack of sustainability and
Yeah.
surety going into business. For you can't plan, a year
Right.
in advance. You're an entrepreneur.
Yep.
That's the critical part of your business is being able to plan. We can't plan.
Well, if you're in the ag business where there's a huge act of God component to your
Sure.
business to begin with, you want to control for everything else,
Right.
right? You can't have weather, and seasonality be an issue and then not know where your labor is going to come from. And to your point, the vast majority of these people are good, honest people trying to feed their families and advance and live the American dream, or have a part of it. So I really amen to that. Can we talk about some national stuff for a second?
Yes.
One other important point, I think, which I hear a lot from Democratic friends and others, is that, what Trump is doing and the federal actions are really hurting California. And what I always say is California got to the place it is through our leaders' actions. Our problems are man-made. Trump didn't create any of California's problems, right? If we had an administration that could partner effectively with the feds, we could solve our problems faster and better, which I think what you said, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that I was sworn in, and within the first week, California caught fire, right? Our budget that was presented to me wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. President Trump became president a couple weeks after that, and the very first thing that I had was I was pulled into a special session to pass a legal fund to sue
Right,
President
right,
Trump for things that
right.
hadn't
What
happened
was it,
yet.
15 million or 20
50
million?
million.
50 million.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there was 25 million that was to go to immigrants to help them fix their paperwork. I am very curious how that money was rolled out, because if it truly was going to helping people get paperwork filed, then I'm supportive of that. But
Right.
my Democratic colleagues would not go on the record putting in there that this would not go to protecting criminal illegal immigrants, meaning murders, rapists, and pedophiles, which was really frustrating. That, to my point, we want to help the good, hardworking people that we love having as part of our communities. But the people that aren't here, aren't proud to be American and be a part of our communities, then they're welcome to go back to the countries that they came from, right?
No kidding.
But that's what's
Yeah.
been frustrating for me is, Newsom keeps trying to pick fights with Trump because that's what's going to keep his name in the media
Right.
for 2028. We all know
Of
what's
course.
coming. But what's frustrating is, in order to have the federal government be our partner, we have to be a good business partner, and we have failed on all fronts. And I remind my Democrat colleagues when we do these resolutions on the floor, calling on the president to do this and calling on Congress, why would the president listen to what we have to say when every time we talk about him or talk about the federal administration, it's just being bullies and throwing emotional arguments out? I think President Trump actually enjoys when we have discourse when it's logical and it's solutions based, but solutions are not coming out of California.
Right.
And it's really frustrating for me, particularly in the Medi-Cal front. And I'm going to mention this just briefly,
Sure.
that when you want to talk about the biggest impact to Medi-Cal in the state of California, it is Gavin Newsom's cuts and mismanagement of Medi-Cal, which is why you and your children and California's most vulnerable will not have access to health care. When we're talking about dentists being reimbursed at $14 for an exam, who in the state of California can do business at that rate? And when it comes to our most vulnerable, the reimbursement rates are so low, providers can't provide the service, right? That goes back to the business mind. That a comment was made on a committee that I was on yesterday that, businesses their only interest is profit. Well, yeah, they're a business. That's kind of why you're in business, that if you're losing money, then you should probably shut your business down. And if you aren't in it for the money, then become a nonprofit.
Mhm.
But every business has a margin. The same with wildfires. California is being devastated by wildfires. We know wildfires are coming during fire season, and then we have wildfires coming not in fire season. Why is that? Because we haven't been doing our job in California. Once again, that's Trump's fault. I did a video that did really well on social media and caught some traction, calling out that President Trump was 6 months into the presidency, and when Gavin Newsom presented California's revised spending plan in May, it was 100% Trump's fault. How are decades worth of failed policy Donald Trump's fault?
Yeah, it's quite the irony, isn't it? Yeah,
It
he's
is. And
very
if you're going to
thick.
be a leader, then own your bad decisions
Yeah,
and fix them.
yeah.
That's, being in the supermajority, the Democrats and Gavin Newsom have nobody standing in their way of fixing these problems except themselves.
Yeah.
So they can try to blame it on the Republican Party of California. They can try to blame it on President Trump, but they might need to take a little time to reflect internally of
Yeah.
who the true villain is.
100%. I mean, I don't know if you saw, Newsom, what he's doing with his podcast and his shape shifting, and he's
Shape-shifting
moving to
is
the
good.
center. He's not. He's moving to the right. He's one side of his mouth, the other. It's really quite something. Last poll I saw in California is 44% of Californians still endorse him, which is hard to believe. I want to know who these 44% are and
I've
what.
never met a single person who voted for Gavin Newsom.
It's interesting when you. Yeah, well, they did.
Somebody did. I'd love to meet them and have a head exam.
I think they're changing their minds. Let's talk about one other topic, and then we do a rapid fire to close.
Let's do it.
I was at a Giants game with my oldest, who's 20. She's a college student. This was before Mamdani won the Democratic primary in New York, and we're sitting next to each other at the game. She says, "Dad, have you heard of this guy Mamdani?" I was like, "Yeah, but how have you?" And she held up her phone, and she showed me his Instagram feed, and she said, "This guy's got the strongest Instagram game I've ever seen." So obviously a terrible candidate and a good candidate, be a terrible mayor for New York. It speaks volumes to what's happening on the left side of the Democratic Party, but he harnessed a lot of emotion.
Right.
He brought young people out to vote. If you look at the voting curve in New York, he spiked young people. And usually the curve is really old people who vote in New York and pretty much everywhere else. How can Republicans leverage the same energy and some of the same strategies to really activate California ahead of 2026?
Put me in, coach.
Okay, talk about it. How would you approach it?
That's been one of the most inspiring parts of this job to date, is when I go somewhere and I speak and people say, "You don't look like the typical Republican. You don't look like the typical elected official," which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing sometimes, but I love it because it's young people that are coming up and saying, "You've inspired me. I want to get involved. I want to get engaged." And one thing that's really, whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump, I tell everybody this, it is he has more people politically engaged than ever before. And how did he do that? He went to things like social media and meeting kids where they were to get them excited and engaged, because look what happened in the last turn. I mean, they all went for, it seems like not all, but a good chunk of young people went for Trump. I'm trying to get that same excitement in the next generation of Republicans that, this, not to be rude, but we're not the traditional old white guys, right? Like, this is the Republican Party that we're going to fight forward. We believe in California. We have hope for California, and we want to be able to afford it along the way.
Right.
That's the main thing that, as a young person, I can tell you. I don't know how in California a lot of young people do it unless they have a great support system around
That's right.
them.
Or they're living 5 to a unit. Or, people are getting by. They're just, as we know, all the stats that only 16% of households can afford a median priced home that is now, approaching $1 million. Whole other subject for our next conversation.
Right.
Assemblywoman, let's do our rapid fire. Okay. We close with the same 5 questions with everyone. And it's kind of like gut reaction, newspaper headline answer. You're queen for a day. The single biggest thing you do to fix California.
Water infrastructure.
Okay, boom. She's to the point. What do outsiders misunderstand most about California?
There's a lot of agriculture here.
I thought you'd say that, and I think that's absolutely
Actually, we're the agriculture capital of the world.
right. So it's not all Hollywood and beaches.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
Yep. Is there a California leader, past or present, you admire?
Ronald Reagan, absolutely. I adore Ronald Reagan, and I try to aspire to take his style of politics, which is bringing people in, meeting people where they are, and just trying to unite people.
Yeah, very human approach. What gives you hope?
It gives me hope that things are changing in California. Conversations are happening, and we have a team of fighters up here in Sacramento that are willing to do the hard thing, and people like you are a part of that process. We can get our message out, and our message is a winning message. When you talk about driving out young people, what Mamdani did was he had a message that appealed to that crowd. let's beat that by having the winning message and meeting young people where they are. Let's meet voters where they are, and let's get people excited about the future of California because it can be bright with the right team.
Yeah, 100%. All right, last question. California is fill in the blank.
California is beautiful.
Okay. Okay. What a great conversation.
Thank you.
Really appreciate meeting you. Thank you so much for the
Such
time.
an honor.